Hey all, welcome back. This is part 6, and we're going to do all combinations of two arrays using for loops. This is the last part of this lesson, and it's the last lesson in this unit. So excellent work. It is a slog to get through all of this, but it is very important to at least glance at some of these concepts once before you see them in a main problem, or particularly, especially when you see them during an interview. So one of the things that we haven't done so far, which is something that we can do using nested for loops, is to generate all of the combinations between two arrays. Just to say that we want 1A, 1B, 1C, 2A, 2B, 2C, 3A, 3B, 3C. And the way we do that is using a nested for loop. Nested for loop is going to look very similar to the way that it has, except instead of this being something like numbers at I, it's just going to be the other for loop. So you figure that this for loop that iterates over the letters happens once per each iteration of the numbers. So while we're at 1, we look at all of these values. While we're at 2, same thing, and the same thing for 3. We're also logging these to the console with a space in between them, just to add a little wrinkle. So there it is. Now is where we get to the fun part. So if you were ever been to like one of those burrito shops where they're like, hey, there are this many possible combinations, or much more importantly, if you're at an ice cream shop and you're trying to determine your options, we have flavors and toppings. So you figure for each flavor, you could have any topping, and for each, and that's how that would be. So you would want to check to see all the combinations you could have. And for this one, we're going to output a nice little string that's going to tell us about you could have this flavor with this topping, and organize all of your options that way, especially if you've ever been around like a toddler or somebody who is serious about their ice cream. It's a good idea to let them know what their options are before they get something, you get something else, they end up liking yours better because they weren't aware that they could get it, and then all of a sudden you're sitting there with half an ice cream cone and they get 1.5 ice cream cones, which is an egregious miscarriage of justice and can be avoided with combinations using nested for loops. So let's go ahead and run this and see all the combinations we could have, and just look at that. Delightful. So cool, so let's jump to the coding challenge. We're going to complete a function that takes two parameters, both arrays, and logs all possible combinations of elements separated by a space, and there should definitely be a parentheses here, see example for details, to the console. Your function should use a nested for loop to log all combinations of the two, of the two arrays, then return nothing. Below is an example of the code running, assuming that you will have completed the described function, generate combinations. So we're going to go wild and switch it up this time like crazy, and in this one we're going to do our test cases first, but that's okay. We are stalwart programmers and are ready for anything at this point. We're also going to fix this error because we're not looping an array of arrays, although we kind of are. We're generating combinations. We've got generating combinations with an array 1 and array 2. Excellent. So the first thing we're going to do is create a loop which goes over the first array. So for variable I is equal to 0, I is less than array 1 dot length, I plus plus. Then we're going to create an inner loop which goes over the second array. So j is equal to 0, j is less than array 2 dot length, j plus plus. Log current element of first array and current element of second array to the console with a space in between. So if you've been following along, there's actually two ways that we could do this. One would be to say array 1 at I plus a space plus array 2 at j. So if we do this, we're going to get all of the proper outputs, except, yes. So line 5 says unexpected identifier. Now, a lot of times you'll get a situation where it points to something and it's like, hey, this is wrong. And it's doing its best, which is to say the output message. What it means by that is that it wasn't expecting there to be an identifier right there. What it was expecting was a semicolon. So if we put one, it'll sort things out. So there's the one way we could do that. But you also might have remembered that if we put a comma in a console.log, it's actually going to separate those two with a space. So either way, I'm not sure if the test that I wrote will work with both cases though. So we'll leave it as this with a space explicitly described in between. Make sure it still works. copy this, bring it back to the input window, paste it, cross our fingers because this is the last one, and if I get an error, it's going to feel kind of bad. Ah, well, that's okay. So I'm going to go fix that, but you want to keep in mind that this works. So let's just consider that this is the end of the video. I will go ahead and fix it so your code will not have a syntax error if you input this code. So with that, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you in the next one.